Hello guys, and welcome back to another Electro review. And yes, that's right, this time it is going to be a pet related review. As you can see, we are looking at the Bluebell Hideaway Rabbit Hutch, which is sold by Pets at Home, which we've recently acquired because, yes, you've guessed it, we've got rabbits. So as you can see, the Bluebell Hideaway is a two-storey hutch with 4 doors. There is a small living quarter on the top floor on the right hand side, and there is some stairs leading down to the ground floor. The hutch measures a little over a metre in height, so it's about 112 centimetres high, 152 centimetres wide and 61 centimetres deep, with a sloping roof which slopes from front to back. So this hutch is suitable for small animals such as rabbits or guinea pigs, and ideally should be placed in a sheltered area of your garden. So whilst the roof is felted, the vast majority of the frontage of the hutch is wire mesh, so it will let the water and the weather in. The next few minutes of the video will be me unboxing the hutch and building it. So if you want to skip forwards to the end of the reviews where you can hear my thoughts on how the hutch performs, then you can simply click here on the video and it will take you to that section. So once the box is open, you'll see that there's a number of flat panels all bundled together. They're really well packaged with the brown paper between each piece. What you'll need to find is the 2 side panels. Now these are relatively distinctive because they have a sloping top. Now remember, the top of this cage or hutch slopes from front to back. So the panel I've just placed down there on the right hand side was the left hand panel. The easiest way to build this hutch is to take the 2 panels and the bottom frontage and locate them into the dowels on the left and the right hand side of the side panels first. And you can do this just simply by putting the dowels into the places that they need to go as such, and then you can screw them in place. Sometimes it's good to bolster one side with a static object. Now this was a real surprise, and I wish more companies did things like this, but all of the screws are individually labelled. So to build the main bulk of the hutch, you'll need screws B. These are generally the sort of mid-range length screws, and there are 2 for each side. So as you can see, I'm putting 2 into the right hand side lower frontage. There's 2 for the left hand side lower and 2 for the left and the right upper frontage. And there we go, there's me screwing in screws B, the 2 screws which are required to hold in place the lower front of the cage on the left hand side. Right, now you can see here I've swapped to an electric screwdriver, and that's the one piece of advice I can give you. If you have one, then I would suggest using it. There are a number of screws that you need to put into this cage to hold it, the panels in place, and only the left, right and roof panels are pre-drilled, so the frontage isn't, and effectively if you're using a hand screwdriver, then you're driving self-tapping screws into the wood itself, so it can get a little tiresome. Once the left and right panels are joined to the upper and lower front panels, the next thing to do is secure the upper and lower front panels together with 2 B screws in the centre, which are in the pre-drilled holes. Okay, so by now you'll see that the hutch will stand on its own even though the back isn't connected. What you now need to do is look for the lower section for the back, and it looks like this. What you'll have are 2 small sections on the left hand side, 2 small pieces of wood, so one on the lower left, one on the upper right, and then you'll have the larger section of batten wood on the right hand side, one on the upper right and one on the lower right. Effectively what this does, on the lower section it will hold the lower section of floor in place, and on the upper section it will hold the upper section of floor in place. The reason that there is a gap on the upper section and on the lower section is because the stairs come down the back section. So to secure the back lower section in place, you just need to take it and you need to locate it on these small dowels which are on the lower sections of the left and right hand corners. Once they're in place, it does hold the board nice and secure, and then what you need to do is take 4 C screws, and they need to be screwed in place on the 4 pre-drilled holes on the back plate. Now you need to look for the floor, which looks like this. It has a single piece of batten wood on it, and it goes with the single piece of batten facing towards the rear back plate on the lower section. Next, look for the upper floor. This is distinctive because it has the U-shaped hole in it, which needs to go facing towards the rear section, not how I've just placed it. Needs to go that way round, and that enables the stairs to go down. Next, pick up the stairs, which are really distinctive. They simply just slot in place, and they're held in place with the small piece of batten wood on the floor section. Next, what you need to do is look for the backing plate for the upper section, but before you do that, you can slot in place the cover for the living quarters first, then the back plate. This simply rests on the lower section for the back and screws in place with another 4 C screws, like so. And then that completes the back section. Okay, so the next step will be to remove the ladder if you've put it in already, because we need to attach the banister rail, which is really easily done. The dowels just connect into the holes, and then there are 3 screws which you just quickly need to screw in, and then the ladder is ready to go into the hutch. Okay, so the next step is to take the remaining C screws, and what we're going to do is screw the floors in place. So there are some pre-drilled holes in the front of the top section there, which you just need to drill straight into the floor section. There are 2 of them, and then there are 2 for the bottom as well. And finally, we put the roof in place. This just slots on top of the hutch itself. We just need to make sure it's nice and central by checking each side and the front and rear. Remember, the roof slopes from front to back, and then once it's in place, just make sure all the doors are closed and everything's fitting nicely. And then what we're going to do is take the remaining screws as per the instructions, and we're going to drill them or screw them into the roof through the felt. There are some pre-drilled holes, and you'll be able to see where they are from the top of the roof. Once those are all secured in place, the hutch is complete. So by now you probably want to know what I thought of the Bluebell Hideaway Hutch from Pets at Home. Well, I would give this 4 out of 5, and there is a reason for that. I will move on to the reasons or the negatives in a moment, but before that I just want to concentrate on the positives. The positives being that it's a 2-storey hutch, so that far outweighs any single-storey hutch straight away. It was really easy to build, took about half an hour to do so with really clear instructions and labelled screws. The build quality, although isn't great, is enough. The wood is probably the most lacking feature. It's quite light. I'm not 100% sure what type of wood is used to build this hutch, and that probably is its only negative feature. Because it's so light, the wood can split around the screws for the latches and the hinges, especially given the hinges are normally in motion when you open up the door, etc. So there can be some strains put on the wood inside, and I've noticed some splitting. Not a great deal, and not anything that's going to cause any issues. The wood itself is quite thin, and it does cause me some form of concern as to how warm the rabbits will be over the winter, so we'll have to look at some form of insulation, certainly for their living quarter on the top right hand corner when the cold weather sets in. Another positive is that there are 4 doors, 2 on the top, 2 on the bottom, so in terms of access for cleaning, you can open up all 4 doors and access absolutely anywhere in the cage with ease. And likewise, for when you're removing and putting the animals back into the cage, all 4 doors are accessible, so you don't have to kneel down on the floor like you would with a single story cage. You can open up one of the upper floors and easily put the animals back in. Another positive is the hutch looks really good once it's built. It probably could do with a coat of sealant or something very similar to protect it from the elements if you're going to leave it out in the garden with perhaps a hutch cover over. As I said during the video, it will need to go somewhere sheltered in the garden if you're not going to look at putting a hutch cover over it, and the reason for that is that the vast majority of the front of the cage is wire mesh, so it will let the water in. A month down the line and the water sort of has poured onto the roof of our hutch, even though it is under a lean-to. The lean-to does leak ever so slightly, and the hutch has remained dry throughout. Okay, moving on to some of the negatives. The construction can be a little bit flimsy. Certainly the floors and the backing plates are a lot thinner than the sides, the roof and the front. However, that doesn't cause too much of an issue. The rear is always going to be backed up against something in our garden, i.e. the garage wall. But the floor could cause problems, certainly where animals are urinating on the floor and the floor's getting wet, especially with rabbits that like to thump. I can see after a couple of years if they're urinating in the same place and thumping there, then eventually their foot's probably going to go through that wood. The bonus is that wood is probably relatively cheap. You could easily pick it up at a builder's merchants and replace the floor with ease. Likewise, because you build the hutch yourself, you could easily line the floor top and bottom with something like old kitchen liner or something, and then place your newspaper and straw over the top, and that will give the wood some form of protection from urine or wet weather. Some of the catches, unfortunately, during the construction process, not by me but at the factory, aren't aligned perfectly. So when you open the door, as you can see here, and when you then go to close it, the latch isn't aligned 100%. You will need to lift the door up ever so slightly to slide the latch in. Now these are easily fixed just by removing one part of the latch and moving it up or down, and then putting the self-tapping screws back into the wood. And lastly, I'm not 100% sure how durable this will be. If you do leave it out in the garden with perhaps some form of cover, then after a couple of years I'm not 100% sure that the hutch will last much longer, and that purely is because of the back plates and the floor. Now I'm sure the front, the side and the roof will be perfectly fine. However, the back and the floors are quite flimsy. There is no real support for them other than the battens that are along the back plate and along the front and sides that hold the floor in place. So if you have a very heavy rabbit that likes to thump, then I can see the floors getting damaged at least within 2 years. If you place it under something like a lean-to or in a garage or somewhere else, then I can see that the wet weather is not going to get the best of it. And if you take that tip of lining the floors with something like liner or plastic, then I'm sure that won't be an issue. Hence the reason I haven't marked this down in a massive way. As I said before, we would probably give it 4 out of 5 stars because of those small annoyances, but other than that, it is a really good hutch. Now you can buy this on the Pets at Home website for £99. If you go online and buy it rather than going into their store, then you get a further £10 discount, which we did. Although we did buy this hutch in store, we also bought a number of other things which included the rabbits, and therefore they allowed us to use the discount that the web was offering. And lastly guys, I will just show you our 2 rabbits, Bo and Oreo. Bo being the white speckled rabbit and Oreo the black and white, living in their little living quarters shortly after this hutch was built. As always guys, thanks for watching and I'll see you next time.